And so now we have our highlight. Do you want to introduce?
I'd like to introduce just a number of amazing people. So we're going to start with you, Mr. Euler, and Mr. Hedman will be part of this as well, and then I'll let them introduce their teams that are with them here tonight to talk about the work that our elementary schools are doing to improve learning.
See if the technology works. Jinx the other day during Smarter Balance Assessment. There it goes.
Thank you, Keith.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. I'm excited to share some of the work from Mountain Meadow. I have two teachers that have taught me a lot about teaching and learning and leading with me tonight. Tracy Nelson, who's our third grade team leader and teaches a 3-4 split, and Tara Cochran, who's our fourth grade team leader and our BLC this year. And what they're going to talk to you about is kind of the learning cycle that we walk through at Mountain Meadow. And that about 4 years ago, we started unit planning in math and in writing. And through that, we created our proactive plans within our classes and proactive intervention plans. Then we analyze our results after our formative assessments, and then kind of revise our plan of action. And it just kind of continues. And so the work that they're going to share tonight is from Unit 4 in math in third grade, Unit 4 in math in fourth grade, and I think it's probably the fourth iteration of both units. And so what you're going to see is things that have been layered over time, and we're constantly learning. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Tracy and then over to Tara, and they're going to kind of share the process that they've walked through and how it's impacting their learning. It's up to you.
This is great. That's perfect.
Do you want last year's?
Yes, last year. So what he's opening up right now is our 2011-2012 TACA. And a TACA is a team analysis of common assessment. So it's a kind of a calibrated or a organized way for a team to have some really good discussions on what they see happening with kids learning along the way. And so these conversations can happen after our common pre-assessment, our common formative assessment, and then at the summative assessment, we hope we're doing a lot of celebrating. And so this is the one from last school year, and we pulled this up at the beginning of our Unit 4 planning this year. Our goal as a third grade team at our building is to get better at our craft. And so each year, we want to look at what happened the previous year, what we said did work, what we said didn't work, and make sure that gets embedded into the unit plan for this year, so we don't have the same problems come up. We learn from our mistakes from before, and we learn from our successes from before. And on this particular unit, our success, our end goal, can you go to the top where it says what our end goal was? 86% of our students met standard on the conceptual multiplication standards. So we looked at that, and we knew when we were goal setting for this year's unit plan that we want incremental growth forward. Our goal as a team is to get more and more kids at standard during our core instruction time. So we're not getting to the end of a unit and going, oh no, there's a bunch of kids that don't have this. We're ready to give the summative. What are we going to do? We want to make sure they're successful along the way, so when they get to that summative, there might be a few or a handful of kids that need some intervention, but most are good to go and ready. So we pulled that up when we were getting ready to do our Unit 4 planning this year. We looked that over, and we set our goals off of last year's results for this year. So there's incremental growth forward. Our goal this year was to have, what's this year's unit plan?
Yeah.
Okay, 87 and 85% meet standards on those. So it's an increase from where our unit plan was the previous year. And so through that process, we go and add in any of that information that we need to improve our units, make them better, add in those techniques that we used or tricks that we used or things that worked for one teacher when we had our conversation. Now they're in the unit plan and we're all going to use. And this was pretty cool this year because when we got to our intervention time on this unit, we sat down to talk and look at our formative assessment. We had 8 or 9 kids that we felt needed some more intensive work. And so we, during our intervention block, had those kids in a 1-to-4 and a 1-to-5 ratio with some of our really amazing para support. And we provided other opportunities for the other kids. But those kids that really needed the meat were in really small groups. It was just a handful, so we were pretty happy with how our core instruction went on that. And at the end of the unit, are we ready to look at this year's packet?
Sure.
I'm not supposed to walk them through a unit plan today, am I? It's just the process of how the TAC and the unit plan go
Okay,
together.
so this year's.
So this form is used throughout the unit. We can plug things in when we get together and talk at each assessment, but at the end of the unit, our end of the unit goals were 89% of our kids were at standard, so that's incremental increased growth from last year, which we were really happy about, even though it's a different group of kids. And 79% on fact fluency. We have a little bit of work there. That one's an easier one to keep working on than the conceptual stuff. And he'll go down to one of the graphs so you can see that. This gives us overall class by class how they did on the summative, and then we also have, if you go to pre and post graph 1. This shows overall as a grade level. You can see where the kids started on the pre-assessment.
Right.
Yep, where the kids were on the formative. And what we were really happy about on this unit, this is the first time we've seen this, we had 89% meet standard, but the kids that didn't were all at the approaching standard area. So that's really good growth for our team. And we feel like a lot of it was really taken care of by trying to work as a team to give really good quality, explicit core instruction along the way. So we'll pull that one up next year when we go to do our Unit 4 planning, set our goal off of that, and that process continues. It's just a work in progress for us. You don't look at it as a finished product, but what we can do to get better at our craft and give the kids better learning experiences.
So Tracy, what was the major change? Was there any major change between Unit 4 last year and Unit 4 this year as far as its focus?
Well, I will say that we love the Bridges curriculum, but it is more a conceptual where the kids are supposed to construct and build understanding, and they really need to have some of those experiences. What our team has done over the years is put more explicit practice in with specific skills that we know are the power standards or the big nuggets in the unit that Bridges doesn't allow for. It moves at a little bit faster pace on things. So they might, for example, supposed to understand how to use an array to represent multiplication in maybe 2 lessons. And then they move on to another strategy, and then they give them another experience. And if our team has decided, because we know what comes in 4th grade and how important arrays are, that we want to focus on that as one of the really big nuggets we want them to understand, we'll spend more time and put our heads together to gather more resources to be able to teach that over a more extended period of time.
And one of the things that the team has done is, you can see in the notes, so moving sessions around so that they can have some concentrated focus time on certain skills. Anything else?
I have a question. I think it's where you have different group of kids each year. Is there something that allows you early on to say, hey, this is, this group isn't getting it?
Well, we always start with the pre-assessment for a unit, and a lot of times we'll give a pre-assessment when we're not even done with the unit before, because it can red flag skills that the kids might, even prerequisite skills that they might need before they go into that unit we can work on. An example of that is, we're working on Unit 5 right now, but we ran an intervention of some of the prereq skills that they need in Unit 5 before we even started that unit, in some small groups for some kids based on some data we had from earlier that allowed us to kind of give them some of those skills they needed as they went into the unit, so we weren't all of a sudden just slammed and surprised by what we saw. It's pretty interesting, even though it's a different group of kids, Tara will probably say the same thing, there's predictable trends on what kids are going to struggle with. And so as a team, you can kind of build capacity of what you're going to, we know this is going to come, what are we going to do to help kids be successful with that, versus just kind of always going exactly with what the curriculum says.
Is there a way for you to move that down? In other words, say, hey, we're struggling with this, you know, can we beef that up in third grade or second grade? to give us the-
Vertical conversations, those do happen in our building, but we know sometimes, I mean, another example is, for example, time and money are second grade standards, but when they come to third grade or screeners, is it because they haven't practiced over the summer, they had mastery of it within that unit, but then other skills were taught? Those are areas where even though they know there's data that shows they had it in second grade, they need to have cleanup. Tara will probably say the same thing. There's going to be data that says kids have things in third grade, but there's always some cleanup that needs to happen, but we do have those conversations in our building.
So I have a question. How do you feel, as you do year after year, and these forums, like you said, they're a work in progress, so how do you feel that helps in your efforts to differentiate, you know, to teach to the different levels of kids? How is that really working?
Well, I think part of it is, it's more than just saying this is how we're going to differentiate and we list it in the unit, because differentiation is a big trick, and some of it is on the spot, some of it's pre-planned, but it's the conversations you have with your team of, okay, I have these kids that are struggling with this, do you have anything you've tried? What did you do with this? Oh, math menus are coming up. You know, you guys, when we're doing math menus, we could have the kids doing that while we could be pulling small groups to work on this and those kinds of things. So I think those things, we build capacity as a team through our conversations more. So it's hard just to put everything down in a unit plan.
A lot of those conversations happen around the formative assessments that they work through.
Can I give a quick plug to Megan Rhodes? Well, we have a data entry system we use called SOAR, and it's been something we've been entering data in for a few years, and our team has found that really valuable for the first time this year, because when we get ready to look at our summative assessment, we can pull up the specific items and sections we want to look at kid by kid, item by item, and we can separate those out. So for this particular unit, for example, we could look at the overall proficiency of kids. We could go select only how they were doing with problem solving and multiplication and division and look at how kids were doing with that to have conversations. We could just pull the conceptual work and look at that. So it's a really great tool for us to not have to do a lot of paperwork, but be able to pull up specifically what we want to look at. That's an example of it. And so that's been extremely valuable for our team. And then we just actually put that in our share files, so the teachers next year will be able to pull that up and say, well, it says that this person wasn't proficient, but what was the struggling area? Because you can't always have those conversations between grade levels all the time. So that's been a really valuable tool for us.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks.
Hi. For those that I don't know personally, I'm Tara Cochran. I'm here representing the 4th grade team, which is Janelle Ross, myself, and Bryn Hutchison. And we're the 4th grade team this year. And to kind of piggyback on what Tracy was saying, we're going to look at a unit plan in math that we did on multiplication. When we started planning this unit, similar to planning every unit, we pulled up the TACA from the previous year. And the one interesting thing this year is that we do have a new team member to our team. And so when that happens, it's great that this is a work in progress, because it's not like, here's the unit, here's how you have to teach it. It's, here's our unit right now, let's revise it, let's make it better together as a team. We all have a say in it. So that's been a really nice thing with new team members. But we looked at last year's TACA and how they did on the standard. This is multi-digit multiplication, so being able to do the algorithm with 2 and 3 and 4 digit numbers. One of the big changes that we made from last year to this year when we pulled up the TACA was that based on the Bridges curriculum that we're using, it actually only teaches kids up to 2 digit by 2 digit. And we noticed that we knew that the standard needed to be more rigorous than that, and so our instruction and our lessons needed to be more rigorous as well. And so this year, we made a huge emphasis on making sure every kid could do 3 digit numbers or beyond, which was some tweaking that we had to do to our unit and adding and supplementing a variety of other materials. When we got to our formative assessments in this unit, we looked at our TACA, we looked at our pre-assessments, our formative assessments, and we made some changes along the way.
Do you want me to help this year's packet?
Sure. Yeah. What we found is that even when we got to our post-assessment, we thought that they were confident with the skill. We had 75% of our kids meeting standard, and we weren't satisfied with that. That wasn't meeting our goal, and we knew that we needed to intervene. And so the nice thing about this TACA, as it's a work in progress, we always come back to it. And so we realized we had 20 or 19 kids that weren't meeting standard yet. And so we have what's called a math club this year. It's a math intervention time where we switch kids around and we rotate based on skills and based on the needs. And we knew that those 20 kids they haven't mastered it yet. And so we had a 3-week intervention time with them. And we actually analyzed the assessment and figured out exactly what they weren't successful with yet, and it was problem solving with multiplication. And then the 3 and 4 digit numbers. So we intervened with them. One teacher did that while the other 2 teachers were doing some enrichment things with the kids who were ready to move on. And then we retested. And so they got the same similar version of the post-assessment again, and we were able to 89%, I think, was our last amount. So we're down to like 8 or 9 kids that haven't yet, but we're still working on it. It's one of those things that it's like we got to keep coming back to. We aren't just going to be satisfied with moving on when it's time. We have to move on when the kids are ready. So this was one of those units that it was nice to look at last year's results. Up the ante a little bit in what was expected from them. And we looked at those higher level questions on the assessment and really focused on helping make sure that they got those ones and not just some of the easier ones. One of the other things I wanted to mention is that with the enrichments, when we give the pre-assessments, like we know, they're going to come to us. Some of the kids, they already have it. I don't know about this particular unit, but generally on the pre-assessment, you're going to have 20 or 30% of kids already meeting standard before we even start. And so this year, our team has worked on creating some enrichment things that they can do instead of some of the core instruction that we're giving to everybody. We've created some station type things or independent or partner activity things that they can do that go beyond the standard, and so they're able to kind of compact the curriculum, and at least once a week we would pick some lessons that they already knew and we could have them do some challenge activities. So that was one thing that we did to just differentiate a little bit within the core so that those kids who are already meeting standard could still have some challenges.
Yeah, when you're speaking of the tech with the PLC, you guys are altering, changing, to meet the needs of the students that you have currently. Are those also shared throughout the district, let's say with the other elementary schools? The conversations that you guys are having and what you're changing, is it going to be the same if I pulled my child out of your school and sent him to Wilkeson?
Yeah, we have those cross-school district conversations a lot.
Okay.
The focus each year is a little bit different. The math focus hasn't been as much this year as the reading.
Okay.
A lot of our cross-school conversations this year have been more on the reading, but some years it's on math. And so we try and get those in as much as possible.
As far as the skill that we're focusing on and what we want as an outcome every unit, it's the same in every building.
Okay.
How we get there, maybe a little bit. And one of the things that I guess I just want to share and praise, both teams have worked really diligently on intervention and extension so that kids that are meeting standard are challenged and have the opportunity to continue to push themselves forward. And they're doing it in 2 different ways with the intervention time that's provided, but they're both working towards that so that they're truly meeting the needs of all kids.
Tracy and Tara, thank you, and please tell your teams thank you. Adam, thank you, the work that you were sharing tonight, this is really the continuous improvement process alive. What happens, Tracy made the statement, we don't wait to see where the kids struggle. They have an idea where they're struggling, and you are seeing that they're making those adjustments on the front end. And Tara, thank you for responding to those kids and those 9 kids that still don't have it. They just don't have it yet. So thank you, and thank your teams as well, and the rest of the staff at Mountain Meadow, because I know you're representing a larger group. Okay, Mr. Hedman and Wilkeson Elementary.
So this is the 3-4 team. It's a combination team. So Dora Wallace is teaching full-time 3rd grade, and Lisa Grace is teaching a 3-4 split class, and Carolyn Hazen is doing a 4th grade. But they work together, and one of the unique things about this team is they're also my TPEPers. They're on the pilot program for TPEP. And so what I'm kind of excited about seeing here is how they are looking through that framework of the 5D, the CEL. They're looking through that, and they're also looking at student growth goals, and we've been playing around a little bit with that new piece there, the student growth goals that the state's requiring, how they're using the unit plans, and in the unit plans, they're thinking about what student growth goals would really look like at a subgroup level, and then as a whole, at a class level, and then as a team level. And then being able to have the 2 points of time, which works really well with the unit plans, where you have a pre and a post, and formative in between. It works really well for when we're looking at units of study. And what they're going to share, Lisa will start us off, is a little bit what they've been learning about how we can tweak our units to be a little bit more aligned with our TPEP process, our evaluation process, and then share some strategies that we're using with kids. We've been really working a lot on formative assessment with kids, having them thinking about their thinking and working together and giving feedback to one another. And I think that's kind of where this is going to go. And we're looking in the area of writing, narrative writing, a unit right now we're currently starting. Okay?
Okay. So we do have kind of an interesting situation because we have one full 4th grade, one full 3rd grade, and then I have 3rd and 4th graders. And we could have done 3 separate takas, and it could have been really interesting, but we decided that one of the things we needed to do to really be a team that could analyze together is we needed to come together and choose how we were going to focus. So our 3rd and 4th grade does operate as a total team. And we do have kids that go different places based on their skills, not so much on their grade level. So anyways, I will show you how we start as, where do we put others started? So we start with our TACA, and it's just like you were seeing with Mountain Meadow. We analyze this, just did our pre-assessment, so we analyze where kids are at, and we look at skill by skill, kid by kid, real similar to what's in, where was I at?
No, put the folder.
Huh? The folder?
Go back.
Go back on. So let's see if I can pick up. That's not what I want. Ah, there it is. Okay, so this is kid by kid, skill by skill, and that's across the top. It matches the areas that are on our rubrics that our district adopted. So each one of us does that with our pre-assessment, so we can look across and see, wow, we have kids that really get focused. They can focus on the prompt. And you know, over here in conventions, it's not all that bad, but man, right there in the middle, you know, when you're looking at content and you're looking at organization, we really have some work there that we need to do. And so that's how we start looking at what we're going to focus on when we write our unit plan. And this is what that, oh, that's expository. Huh?
Go back there.
The back one? Listen, it wasn't in that one? There it is.
Yep.
Okay, so this is how our writing plan looks. And you can see at the top there's our timeline. We talk about how we do the pre-assessment. And then we do a section called current status. So this is what it looks like for all of our 3rd and 4th graders. When you're looking at how many intensive kids we have, how many kids are at the strategic level or approaching standard, and how many are already meeting standard for writing. And then we also noted that we do have new students. Just because we gave the pre-assessment 2 weeks ago doesn't mean that all kids were tested, because we constantly have kids coming and going. And so we are in making sure we include that there are 2 new students that we are planning for. And we have a SMART goal. 66 of our students that are currently listed as approaching standard and meeting standard will all be meeting standard by the end of April 2013. The 12 students that scored at the intensive level will move to the strategic level, including the 2 new students that enrolled after the pre-assessment. So that's how we write our SMART goals. The district power standards are based on the state standards, but we also look pretty regularly at the Common Core standards, because that's the direction we're moving, and especially being the TPEPers. I feel like we should have t-shirts.
That's right, the name's changing, so.
We do a lot of our own goal setting based on the Common Core. So this was the Common Core state standard that really gets emphasized in this unit of study. And then these are all of the, they're not called substandards. I'm trying to remember, what are they called?
We're not bailing you out, move on.
Yeah. It's just my team. Anyway, so then we have, we talk about our lessons being based on Step Up to Writing, and we rewrite the daily lessons into I-CAN statements for the kids, so that when you're talking to the kids about the learning target, it's in kid-friendly language. So you can see those are all in very kid-friendly language. And our kids in our classrooms, because they also record their targets at the end of every day, they're able to verbalize what it is that they've been working on, and put that in their planner to share with their parents at the end of the day. We have checks for understanding, and I don't know, did you bring the video for the business groups? One of the things that we really enjoy doing as a team is we get our kids together into what we call business groups, and they do analysis of work. It's really hard for one person to always be looking at 27 pieces of work, and to have the kids get together and share and analyze with each other. And they're brutal. They are so hard on each other, way harder than we could ever be. But we do teach them protocol. We do teach them how to talk to each other. We make sure that there's a point for their business group, so they know that they're looking for a specific skill during that time. And then they get lots of feedback, then not just from us, but also from their peers.
When they look at they look at the video, and then they analyze it as a class, like what they could have done better to grow on, and then they make note of that on their, so that the business groups are also a learning experience.
And then the other thing that we wanted to make sure that we included, because when we finished the expository unit, we realized that we needed to continue working on expository all the way through the year, and that really falls into a lot of other curriculum areas. You look at it in math, you look at it in science, social studies. Our kids are working on expository or explanatory writing with their technology teacher, working on their social studies CBAs, and then I also brought some math writing the kids did today, because they need to be able to write about everything that they're doing. They need to be able to put their understanding of what they're working on into written language. Based on research, that's one of the ways you can really improve student achievement. So, and then we have a common summative assessment that we'll give, and there's been some conversations about having prompt menus so that we can bring more relevance to the students, that they aren't just given a prompt that may or may not be of interest to them, but they can choose something that is of interest to them and maybe raise that level of engagement in the writing.
So could you go to any questions And then why don't you pull up the student group growth goals?
Okay.
And maybe, you know, speak to that, kind of, or whoever can speak to that.
I'm putting yours up there.
It's yours.
These guys have practiced, they didn't tell us.
This is good. This is real stuff right here. This is
I'll hold your hand.
There we go.
It's okay. So when we looked at what, so as T-Peppers then, we looked at that, the formative assessment and the TACA that we did in the formative assessment, and we looked at what areas we could grow in according to the TPEP requirements. So with 6.1 being establishing student growth for, was this the whole class or? Yeah, for the whole class. Then we looked at what we could do as far as a student growth goal for the whole class. And so the majority of my students were coming in at a level 2 in most areas. There was a few level 1s and a few level 3s, but they were pretty concentrated in level 2s. And so I felt reasonably confident that I could work with the majority of these students to get them to a level 3. So that was reflected in my TPEP goal also. There.
So then this is the actual first piece. 6.1 is where you actually establish the goal for the whole class. 6.2 then is how do they actually achieve on that summative assessment. So that will then be brought down here. Right down here at this bottom part is where we'll then, what was the actual current status at the end of that summative piece there. So try to just get a format because then there's rubrics that go with this and that are state. And so there's a score of 4, 3, 2, 1 based on that.
Okay, so then this is 3.1, a subgroup of kids that I wanted to focus a little more diligently with. And so after the pretest, there was a group of kids that were on the lower end of the 2s when I assessed them, or that I thought I would have a chance at least of getting them to a high 2 or a low 3. And so so I wanted to work with that small group of kids. And then and what I noticed the most was that they were faltering a bit in their organization, and that was the key to all the rest of it. If they had a well-organized narrative, using the narrative template, we use one from Step Up that has pictures, or they have the choice. We also use a lot the one that Yolanda showed us with the beginning, the middle, and the end that she gave to us a few years ago. So we'll work on their organization using those templates. Sometimes the one with the pictures is a little bit easier for this type of group of kids because it's not quite as complex. It's a little more simplistic and easier for them to follow.
So we've made a plan that gives the kids more space for writing, which those kids tend to sometimes have difficulty. They have larger handwriting, and so it gives them more space for that planning. And in my class, that subgroup, we really have to plan those transitions and getting past. They have to plan something besides then and next. And so we've had lessons, and they've pulled out their notebooks on where we've made lists of good transitions, and there's time transitions and movement transitions. So that's in their plan, and if they plan it well, then they will use it. If you just said it right, then they would say, and they would just be next, or and then if they get past next week, 5 minutes later, and then 5 minutes later again. So trying to get them not to repeat their transitions, but we both found in that lower group that we had to come up with a different thing than Yolanda had to give them more room to write and to support them more to set them up.
I think working as a professional learning community, their sub-goals and their classroom goals were much stronger when they were able to work together, even though it's different data and different kids. So we could put our heads together and get the language just right. Okay, so what strategies? And they added more to the goal than even necessary, because they put in strategies that they're going to use for this small group of kids. And that group of kids is whatever kids they determined that really needed more instruction. So that we left that pretty open at the subgroup level. And it goes all back to that spreadsheet chart and skill by skill, kid by kid, and being able to really identify those kids. So.
Carolyn, oh, I've got the questions. Is there any questions?
Just interesting how being organized helps.
What a concept.
It's very difficult for those kids, I'm finding in my subgroup, they're having trouble writing the sentences, so we've been practicing even saying juicy sentences, and share, like when they shared what they did for spring break, they had to put that into a sentence with juicy words. That we don't ask kids to talk at that level, so how can they write at that level? And so that's really been some interesting things that we've been observing as a team. And how do you get those kids, you ask kids to write at a certain level, but they don't talk there.
We also decided that we needed to go with a strategy that they were already really familiar with. So one of the things that most of them are familiar with are fairy tales. And so instead of just keeping something real open-ended, teaching them how to piggyback on a fairy tale they already know. There's tons of fractured fairy tales out there. And we've used a lot of those in class as mentor texts, so the kids get an idea of how a certain storyline is followed, a certain plot line is followed over and over again, but this person did it with a cowgirl, and this person did it with the bears of the Pacific Northwest instead of just the three bears. So you have stories that they're very familiar with that they can already have in their head when they go to use a new prompt and follow that storyline.
It was also another way that we used business groups is they together wrote a narrative as a business group. They each had jobs that they did, and so then we all, they read them to us, and then we all analyzed theirs together at the story that their business group did. So that pulled in the subgroup too, to help to support them on what it looks like to write a narrative with the more advanced kids.
Well, Lisa and Dora and Carolyn, I want to tell you thank you. Again, impressed with the work that you're doing on your team, and would like to see the follow-up to the way you're setting your goals. And I'm really happy that you don't have to make stuff up to set your goals. That you go right to your plan, and you lift it right off to what you have to do for TPEP. So that's awesome. So thank you. Mr. Hedman, this question is for you.
Okay.
What are you most proud of these teachers and your teams back at Wilkeson and the work that they're doing this year?
They have embraced this new evaluation piece, ability growth piece, as how can we get better, and that the actual framework, the instructional framework, is actually giving them ways to kind of target certain things, like success criteria is something that we've kind of had an idea about that's important for a learning target, but now they have kids, and they are discussing this in their groups, having kids help create what that success criteria would look like. And so kids are taking a lot of ownership in learning, which is another huge piece of the 5D framework. So they're sharing, they're passionate to grow and to get better. I think it's something that's really admirable and a great model for our school. And I think for our district, it's something that is really good for any school to see that kind of working together.
Well, thank you all for your commitment, and Mr. Euler and Mrs. Cochran the same. So thanks for the presentations tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We really do appreciate it. And I think what I really like, it seems like in years past when we'd get like a learning plan or something in here for that, it was just sort of a, well, here's what we wrote, here's what this looks like, and we just kind of moved through it. But now, the fact that you guys can just get up there and talk about it and be excited about the work that you're doing and put that forth and put it all in just regular language, it shows to me that it's just a day by day, it's something you're doing every day. You're really working the plans, they're not just sitting in a book somewhere on the shelf. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Sure. The kids are now saying, we noticed at the end of this assessment that we didn't do very good on author's purpose. How are you going to help us for the next unit? Because they know what every question, what the target was, and what they didn't do on. So I'm seeing a change in the kids too. It's really cool.
The last set of visitors to the district, and we have another set here coming in a couple of weeks, but they're out touring and looking at the plans, and they're just amazed at what these teachers are doing and the work they're doing and connecting the TACA form and the unit plan and that continuous improvement cycle. We get a lot of questions and a lot of follow-up to those two documents, so thank you.
Thank you.